for fans to get to see this giant 4-hour movie that's completely singular to their investment. If you followed the first 2 movies, this movie really kind of takes you into a completely immersive scope and scale. The fan community has sort of risen up demanding this version. Well, because of the promise I've made them over the course of the 2 other movies, it has created this movement that said, we need to know how it ends. Because this will be, once you do this, you do I beam them, you're gonna have your run-in with Cyborg where you...
Zach, he's got such an incredible brain for the visual. He has everything planned out in his head before we get there. It's remarkable to be a part of.
Everything that we work in, we're stepping into his drawings. So you're like, can I see this scene before we make it? And he has beautiful drawings.
You know, they're very good about making sure that we get exactly what it is that they've envisioned. You know, so, you know, the way they set up all these shots, it's so specific and so well thought out. All I have to do is just step in and breathe and be.
I like Zach, and he's got a lot of enthusiasm, and he's got this boyish kind of energy where he's just psyched to be at work every day, and I think you need that to get through a Herculean effort like these movies.
Ready? Ready. Okay, let's go. When I'm on set and we're shooting, it's a fun atmosphere for me. I mean, I don't want to say it's a playground, but it is a bit.
It was just so nice, and there was never a dull moment on set. We were always talking or making each other laugh. It was just awesome.
Yeah! I want to be like Zack Snyder. There's a lot of beautiful traits that I will take on more than anyone I've ever worked with.
Glad hugs.
Don't tell him that. But he's all right. He's all right.
You know, just over the course of making these sort of epic movies, you know, you get closer with the actors. I do count them all as friends, and I think with all of these guys, I sort of cast them in their alter ego first and model that to who they are as people. That allows the character, because it's grounded, it allows you to accept the superhero version in a much easier way. In this movie, in Justice League, because there's no time restraint on the film, it does give us an opportunity to really see everyone fulfill their arc within the context of the movie. The emotional journey is there. It's been really fun to put the original Steppenwolf back in the movie. You know, he's quite a realized character. You know, he has struggles, he has history. We understand his relationship to Darkseid and to Zod, and you get it, why he's doing what he's doing.
He will see my worth again.
And then being able to shoot an additional scene for Justice League, and it was fun to do, and it's fun to get Ben back in the cowl. He looks as good as ever in that cowl. I was like, we never stopped.
You still think it was a good idea bringing him along? What do you think?
Cut. In any endeavor, to be supported is an incredible thing, you know, and especially supported by this incredible fan base. They've really taken the movie to heart, and so there is something really satisfying and fun for me bringing these amazing fans a movie that they wanted to see.
There's an attack coming.
It's already here.
This really blows out to a much larger mythological version of the movie. These epic set pieces, one after another.
I'm putting together a team, people with special abilities.
It's a really epic gods fighting gods scale. So that's what I'm excited for fans to get to see.
They will stumble. They will fall. They will join you in the SOUNDCLOUD.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I'm Russ, Xbox Live Toaster 360. He is Steve, Xbox Live Stevavitch. And long live the ZACK SNYDER Justice League cut in episode 217 today, March 25th, 2021. There is a metric ton to go over with this particular movie review. And so we're just going to get right into it. We're going to have our topic of the day, which is the ZACK SNYDER Justice League movie review. There's no need to even fast forward to it if you don't want to, because we have nothing else to say.
The timestamp.
It starts right now. One little thing that, little house cleaning.
Oh,
we
sure.
were going to go over our review of WandaVision this week. However, we have decided to flip-flop that with the Justice League movie review. So this week, movie review of Justice League. Next week will be the WandaVision Season 1 review, which you don't want to miss either. And I'm sure Steve has all kind of fun stuff that he's going to be talking about when it comes to... Actually, you haven't watched all of it yet, have you? Steve still has some homework to do on that one.
You stopped me.
I did. I put the e-brake on that. Well, not.
No, you just put it in park.
I was going to say, you hadn't even taken it out of park yet.
I had started to, I had watched it into like episode 2. I'm like, I'll hold my thought.
Episode 2.
I was like, episode 2. I'm like, this is, I don't know, not my thing right now. I have more exciting stuff to do. And so then I started watching it again. I watched episode 3 and I'm like, and I think there's 9 episodes and I'm planning them out for the rest of the week going, okay, I get out of work and got a few things to do. I'm going to plan this out at about 50 minutes a piece or less. Okay.
So then I text him
on Tuesday.
And I say, hey,
on Tuesday,
you know what? Let's actually swap this around. Steve's like, oh, good, because I was planning on binge watching all the episodes of WandaVision and everything else, so it works out. So you know what? It wasn't like you were like almost done with the season. There was no kind of e-breakage. Like I said, you were still in park, baby.
I was not in park at all.
He was in neutral.
Had planned out the week, and I would have had it all watched come today.
I bet you had a bunch of little WandaVision stickers on your little calendar, didn't you, Steve?
I did.
On your desk.
I did.
And you didn't share. You did not share.
I wore a infinity stone right here on my head all week.
Your sticky note infinity stone?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at myself in the mirror and I get up. Oh, right. Yeah, the sticky note, WandaVision. I'll do that.
Well, without further ado, let's get right into it. It's time for the topic of the day. Topic of the day is the ZACK SNYDER Justice League movie review. We are going to do Snyder, exactly. Good call there, mate. We are going to do what we always do on this program, which is offer our high-level, spoiler-free thoughts of the film before going into the spoiler elevator and going down to spoiler territory, where we give more of our detailed analysis of what we witnessed in the film. Steve, I'm excited about talking to you about this. I have, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of morsels that I want to be able to just permeate that bald, beautiful head of yours.
Uh-huh.
Do you want me to start? Or do you want to start, Steve?
Yeah, you just go right on ahead, Russ. You know, you're brimming with it. Go ahead and let it go.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. That means a lot. Okay, first and foremost, I'm just going to get this out of the way. The Zack Snyder cut is hands down better by a mile, by 10 miles. Like, oh my goodness.
11 miles.
It's just, oh my. Absolutely great character development in this movie. Like, if you looked at the original cut of Justice League that came out in 2017 to what we have today in 2021, I was absolutely just overjoyed with so much more attention to the characters like Flash, to Cyborg, to Steppenwolf, even some new characters that we'll get into later on that were not present in the original take of this film. We'll get more into that later on. More backstory of significant plot points and items that were missing before that was like, oh my goodness, now we have purpose. This is fantastic. And the DC ecosystem was on full display. Like, there were moments in this film that you and I have talked about in the past where, like, one of the issues that we've had with DC up until this point is how they can't really seem to, like, get the same type of mojo that Marvel has in terms of, like, you know, how they've been able to create and construct this huge Marvel ecosystem where all the characters coincide and cross over in each other's films and have just this living, breathing, organic world that they all live in. This film was one of those films where, like, oh my goodness, we got glimpses of what the DC version of that could be like, which was awesome. Really, really, really cool. I mean, one of the things that's just crazy is that this film is just over 4 hours long. 4 hours. The thing that's crazy about that is we were thinking it was probably going to be like clocking in at 3 hours.
Yeah, 4 hours with the credits or something. With the Easter egg.
But I mean, it just absolutely, like, I mean, I loved it. Like, it was one of those things where, like, I could tell, I ended up watching, I think, like, the first 3 hours one evening. And then I finished up the final hour, kind of like what you did, I think, on the following evening. But my goodness, like, I could have easily taken 8 hours of that. It was so well paced, and all the characters in there were so properly represented that, yeah, I mean, I did feel it. Like, by the time hour 4 came up, I was like, man, okay, this is really involved. There's a lot of thought behind this. But I didn't want it to end either. I was like, man, well, so what's next? What's going to happen? I think also, and this is like no spoiler or anything like that, but I think that this is a fascinating experiment with this type of scenario where we, as moviegoers, we haven't really been exposed to this type of situation where you have a film that came out a few years ago, and there was this director who was absolutely passionate about trying to get his vision realized for a film, really went to bat, had his producers also go to bat for him, and you had a movie studio that dumped an additional $70 million into the budget for him to be able to have his vision realized. And I feel like that's a very special thing, because you just don't see that. And we've talked throughout our entire lives about how there are these movies that come and they're highly anticipated, right? Like, we can't wait to see them. We're very excited to see them. And then they disappoint. And we're kind of left with, like, what could have been. Oh, if they only did this. Oh, if they only fixed that. And we have an example of that here, which is incredible, because he literally went through and fixed just about every single type of issue that I know I had. I don't know if he did for you. We'll find out. But, like, I mean, I was sitting there. I mean, it was this, like, euphoric surreal experience where you're just like, man, what if like everybody had the chance to make it right? You know what I mean?
Or you're going to was Josh Sweden? Is that what his name is?
Joss Whedon.
Joss.
Joss. Joss
from Sweden.
No. And he's not made of wheat either. Just Joss Whedon.
Joss Wheaties.
No.
You know, if you're him right now, all your buddies are looking at you going, dude, your movie sucked. Compared to this one, your version sucked, bruh.
I think one of the interesting things, because I did think also about how, you know, when it comes to Joss, like, okay, Joss was the director of the Avengers movie. Another phenomenal movie. Like that was like for us, that was like the golden age of comic book movies, right? The first time that we saw Loki attacking Earth with some of Thanos' soldiers and whatnot, and it was the first time that we had seen the Avengers fighting side by side together. That was a hallmark moment. You're just like, oh my goodness, we have arrived. Like this is the kind of thing that we would talk about as teenagers at the comic book store. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a movie like this? So, I mean, Joss Whedon's talent is not to be scoffed at all because he does have a lot of skill and talent. But what's interesting in this type of scenario is how, you know, you think back to like how Zack Snyder, you know, he had that awful family tragedy with his daughter, right? So he, rightfully so, you know, excuses himself from the production of the Justice League, which is this huge tentpole film, right? Like Warner Brothers has put a ton of money into this. And so then they're trying to think, okay, how can we keep this film on schedule and on budget? How can we keep moving forward with this? Because, I mean, you have hundreds, if not thousands of people who are getting paychecks and are involved in certain capacities, everything else. And so then all of a sudden they tap on Joss Whedon, who was not a part of this from the beginning, and was like, hey, can you come in and finish what Zack started? And so, I mean, I kind of feel for him in that regard, because it's like he's coming in blind, right? Like he hasn't been intimately involved with the project from day one. So then he's bringing in some of his, you know, tools and his like perspective on how to create these team-based comic book movies. And it just didn't work out when it came to Justice League, you know? So yeah, like on the one hand, it's like his version just wasn't good. However, that's not to say that he's not a good director. I just think that in terms of, you know, it goes back to when you're casting, and this goes for both the actors as well as the crew, like you, especially when you have a certain type of direction you're heading or you're going to, there are just people who fit that particular direction better than others. The last thing I want to say, and then I'll turn over to you, because I'm like diarrhea of the mouth over here, Steve.
That's gross.
The IMAX ratio to me was a little odd at first, but honestly, I kind of got used to it after a while.
IMAX ratio? You mean the aspect ratio?
Well, it was the IMAX. What did I say?
You said IMAX ratio.
So the ratio that you see on your TV was
aspect
actually
ratio.
Yeah, but it's the I'm sorry, IMAX aspect ratio. So essentially, he's taking what you get from the raw footage of IMAX film, and instead of reformatting it to 16:9, he just kept it in its original state.
Which is kind of odd, I thought.
Yeah, like I mean, if I had a choice, I would have preferred to it be 16:9, just because that's just what I like. I like that more like panoramic 16:9 widescreen.
Makes more sense to do it that way.
Yeah, and I remember reading something about how he felt that the verticality helped with some of the visuals, because you have so many heroes that are flying, or they're like wielding these like tridents or axes or whatever in this vertical motion and stuff. I mean, I could kind of get there and see it, but honestly, if I was given the choice, I would have liked to have a 16:9 option. But that's just, you know, my opinion. Anyway, I have so much more to talk about, which I will save for now. Steve, I'm dying to know, what did you think of the Zack Snyder Justice League?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely better. I was thinking, man, this is pretty close, not necessarily back to back, but I think first time in my recent memory where a movie has been remade in such a short amount of time. I mean, yeah, it's just like everyone went, yeah, we don't like that movie. Warner Brothers, DC, we don't know what you're doing. Please do it, make it right, you know? And yeah, I mean, from head to toe, there's still some stuff that I wasn't too crazy about, but I mean, this movie was memorable. The last one wasn't. And so from the music to the script to the pacing to the imagery, I mean there's more stuff was done right in this than not. And I got to thinking about how Wonder Woman is in this movie and how not good I thought the last film was. And I went, where was this happening? Are we going to get a new Wonder Woman version? You know, like this, what's happening? Because
she was terrific, huh?
And this one was rated R too.
Yes.
And that was funny because it didn't seem like it was rated R. Like they used a few...
Oh, it wasn't necessarily
potty words.
It wasn't necessarily the language that got it. Did you notice like how many dismembered bodies that Steppenwolf was? Again, I don't want to do any spoilers right now, but
it wasn't terrible. I mean,
you're just desensitized to the violence.
Lord of the Rings wasn't rated R, and there was plenty of impallations and beheadings in Lord of the Rings.
Were there?
Yeah, Russ.
I mean, I was thinking about some of the battle sequences and you see people get stuck with arrows and that sort of thing, but I never really...
Their heads cut off and
There was, what's his name? Not Lurch, but what was the Urukai's, the leader Urukai who got his head got lopped off by Strider.
Yeah.
But Aragorn.
Yeah, but there's plenty of orcs that...
Did you see elves' heads and human heads and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't recall that.
They're like in the Two Towers, how they launched all those heads over to scare... Oh wait, no, that wasn't Two Towers. That was Return of the King. Remember how they were trying to put fear into the White Army or the castle.
Yes.
And it's like catapulted all over these heads, like they've been just cut off and stuff. I mean, there's plenty of dismemberments, Russ.
But was there a lot of blood though? That's the key. Is if you see blood, that's kind of like a shoo-in for the R rating.
I mean, it wasn't a gore fest, but yeah.
The only kind of blood I remember were orc blood or goblin blood. More of kind of the fantasy blood. It wasn't a human who's totally.
Either way, I mean, rated. I'm glad they left it rated R because that gives them a lot more freedom to do what they need to do to make it more comic book esque. Because the comics aren't clean by a long shot. I mean, the comics are pretty darn bloody.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they did it. I could have. It sounds bad, but I could have been a little bit more violent, I guess.
Steve's in the mood for some Gladiator. Steve's in the audience. He's doing the Emperor thing, which, by the way, I think we learned that actually the little trivia for you. And in the movie Gladiator, you see the Emperor he does this, which means kill him or whatever.
Right.
Apparently,
yes.
In the old days, actually, it was the opposite. If the Emperor gave the thumbs up, I think it actually meant off with his head or kill him off or whatever.
Or green light.
At least. Yeah. Yes. Any other high-level thoughts, Steve?
Russ? No.
Step with me into the spoiler elevator, Steve. I have a question for you.
I don't have an answer.
I think you do. My question to you, Steve. What other film can you think of that you would like if they gave you a choice of, hey, we're going to allow you to pick a movie for us to redo. We're going to give you a $70 million budget, and we're going to have the director who's on fire to make it right. What movie would that be?
Oh, you're just going to pop that on me right now?
It's a good question, isn't it?
Well, because we're a limited time, I'm going to say Wonder Woman 1984.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Thank you. What about you?
I'm going to say I agree. I'm going to pick Wonder Woman 1984. Absolutely.
Well,
we deserve it.
Indeed we do.
Okay, we have now entered the spoiler territory of our movie review. So if you haven't seen this version of the film, or if you just don't care,
go get HBO Max.
Exactly. You can go to HBO Max, watch it, come back and resume it. Otherwise, you don't care. Well, we will continue as planned.
If you don't care, neither do we.
And we care. Doesn't matter. Okay. So much here, Steve. So much.
Okay, go.
Where to begin here? Okay, so the overall synopsis, just to kind of remind everybody
the stage.
Here. So, determined to ensure Superman's ultimate sacrifice was not in vain, which is from Batman versus Superman, and I don't think you've seen that yet, right?
No, you said you saw it, you didn't like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Bruce Wayne aligns his forces with Diana Prince. With plans to recruit a bunch of additional metahumans, right? Basically form this team to protect the world from an approaching threat of catastrophic proportions. I think that's kind of like a nice broad synopsis of what this film is about.
Sure, Russ.
And this is no surprise because the original iteration of this film came out in 2017. So everyone's kind of aware of that general premise.
The haps.
Okay. I'm going to go down my list here. I'm going to refer to it.
Okay.
I want to get your thoughts on this as well.
Sure. Okay, I'm ready.
So at the beginning, we see the death of Superman. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's in the arms of, what's that? I just totally drew.
Oh, great.
It's not Abomination. It's
a bad guy.
Oh, don't do that. Now you're making it worse.
And he's really strong and ugly.
Oh, Doomsday. That's his name.
Oh,
Doomsday. Anyway, so Batman versus Superman, what ends up happening is that do you care if I kind of give you a little spoiler here?
Just give it to me, Russ.
Okay. Lex Luthor is in Batman versus Superman.
Sure, yeah.
And I won't tell you how this happens, but he is able to actually create Doomsday.
Okay.
Through some sort of horrific act and everything else. Doomsday is one of the pretty mean baddies in the Superman comic books.
I figured.
And so you see it in the movie where he ends up like Superman ends up able to kill Doomsday, and as well as Doomsday takes out Superman, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting is when I look at this particular film, if you think of the first theatrical version of this, that scene did not exist.
Right.
The first scene that we see instead was that kind of like cell phone, that kid doing the cell phone video
with
of Superman.
Digital mustache going on, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that was a completely different tone that set the stage for that particular film versus this one, which is literally, I mean, it was a Lord of the Rings moment where, like, if you recall, like in the Two Towers film, Peter Jackson picks up right where you basically leave off in Fellowship of the Ring, where, like, I mean, Gandalf is still going to fisticuffs with I don't even know,
the Balrog.
The Balrog,
Yeah.
thank you.
No problem.
Which is awesome because, I mean, again, it's like there's no slow moment. It's like, nope, we are going to just shove you right back into where we left off. It's like, oh, you had a bathroom break? You got a little snack? Okay, let's keep going. So
tighten up your seatbelts, okay?
Yeah, click, click. And I think that in this situation, it's the same kind of deal where at the end of Batman versus Superman, you kind of have this more really sad, morbid situation because you realize, oh my gosh, like Superman's dead. And in this one, you know that they continue with that. I thought his death cry was haunting. It was the perfect way for this film to begin, where Superman is the strongest hero of the Justice League, and to have him basically, you know, he didn't necessarily sacrifice himself, but he kind of did.
Okay.
But having those death cry shockwaves go out, and basically like everyone on Earth heard them, both good people and bad people and everything else. And then having also having it act as like this great teaser and replaces what we were talking about with the Superman with a cell phone, but like it acts as like this foreshadow, and it actually gives purpose. It's not just for like dramatic effect of seeing Superman scream like that, but you see how his shockwaves awaken the mother boxes. Love it. Because at this point in time, you know, as someone who does, you know, I'm not a diehard Superman comic book reader. I like the character as a whole, but I'm kind of more peripheral when it comes to Superman. I don't know all the like, you know, intricate ins and outs and that sort of thing. However, it doesn't matter, because when you see this, you're like, oh, okay,
that can't be good.
That can't be good at all. What was also worth noting was that Lex Luthor at the end of Batman versus Superman was giving some kind of warning about how, you know, the god is dead kind of thing. And it also acts as foreshadow, because Lex Luthor was in Superman's downed ship learning all this information and everything else. And so there were things that he alluded to in Batman versus Superman that we are now seeing come to fruition, basically. What did you think of the death screams?
You know, I thought at first it was haunting, like you said, but then it started droning on and on and on. I mean, I think it was like the first 15 minutes of the movie. You just kept on hearing
15 minutes.
I mean, then the sound waves kept on going. I'm like, man, that's really poor. That's quite the yell. And then it would show like one box waking up, and then people would look around like, man. And then you hear, and then they could see it underwater. And then you hear, and it kept on going. I'm like, okay, I get it. He's hurt. He's dying. It kind of went a bit too long.
Oh, okay, well, I disagree. I think it was the perfect amount of time. I think it really set up the totality of him dying, and how, again, he was kind of like a gatekeeper. He kept certain evil forces at bay and in check. And with him getting killed in that regard, it was much more of a dire situation. And again, it connected everybody in the world together, even though they weren't in the same place. There was this event, and not everybody knew what was going on. Like, they're just like, what was that? And, you know, more of a subconscious level, that was really cool, because it reinforces the notion, even in the real world, about like how there are different events that transpire, and we're all in it, whether we want to be or not. And it's very interesting how much of a symbiotic relationship everyone has with each other, even if you've never met most of the people in the world. The one of the big things I want to talk about is how you never underestimate the importance of backstory, functionality, and purpose in film. And this film totally had this in droves. I mean, the mother boxes, for example, in the first iteration of this film, we get no explanation at all. Like,
I don't remember the mother boxes existing.
Honestly. I mean, the only like, even Steppenwolf referred to them as mother in the first iteration. He never even said mother boxes. And the only reason why I knew the name Mother Boxes is because I play Injustice and Injustice 2 on my Xbox. So, I mean, they have Mother Boxes in the game. So I was like, oh, okay, I kind of have an idea of what that is. But anyway, they actually go into detail in this film explaining what the Mother Boxes are. We find out about Steppenwolf's purpose and his punishment, which I'll get to in a bit later. Again, suddenly he's fleshed out. He's no longer like this random alien that plops out of nowhere and he wants to really get that weird cube for some reason. I mean, it's not abstract anymore. It's like, oh my goodness, like now I have points of reference. You also have why Steppenwolf chose the nuclear facility. In the first version of the film, it's like, I kind of chalked it up as a viewer. I was like, oh, it's supposed to be like this kind of I don't know, dastardly place that looks kind of creepy. Oh, it's a nuclear facility. I wouldn't want to be there. You know, like that was kind of like the aesthetic that they just chose because it was a place that you wouldn't want to be at. And in this version, we realize how like due to the toxicity of the area that the creatures actually feed off that, it creates more of a supportive ecosystem for them. Oh,
right.
Okay. Well, that's really awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And then another thing which we'll talk to much more as we go along with this is the introduction of Desaad and Darkseid. It completely introduces the idea that there is a bigger universe existing in the DCU.
I was introduced to that with Man of Steel. I mean, he comes from a land far, far away.
Yeah, and you're actually, that's a good point too, is that Man of Steel, like that was one of the things that you and I both really liked about that film, was the idea that like mankind was no longer alone. And the film was really good at, like, it wasn't just spoon feeding that to us, but it was more about like this undercurrent. Like, again, Zack's is really one of his gifts is being able, like when, especially like when he's like in the zone like that, he's really good at that undercurrent subconscious kind of stuff where like you can't quite explain or make out what's going on, but it's more of like a gut feeling or a gut reaction to something, where like in Man of Steel, like the first time that the humans meet with the Kryptonians and they have that really like tense kind of exchange of prisoners or something, and there's no shots fired, no fighting or whatever, but like that was probably one of my favorite scenes in that film because it reinforces that notion of we are not alone. There are other beings and planets and stuff that exist in the universe. So I felt like this was like another example of that. What did you think, Steve, about all that?
Yeah.
Backstory, functionality, and purpose.
So I was definitely relieved. I mean, from the point when I remember when we watched the first one, the first version of this film. And then Darkseid pops out of nowhere in the Amazon, and we're going, okay, he's a brute, and he's a thug, and there's nothing special about him, and why is he here, and all this, that, and the other. And then, yeah, I got to thinking, they have 4 hours to give us story and answers to all the questions that we have. And so, yes, I was definitely thankful that they did it the way they did. I'm glad that they took the time to show the backstory of, Desaad, I guess it was.
Yeah, so Desaad, it was one of Darkseid's lieutenants. He was the one that you saw kind of, he had that really cool stone holographic morphing thing. So you see him quite a bit before you see Darkseid.
So the big baddie.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Darkseid.
Darkseid.
And Desaad is one of his lieutenants. Like, did you notice how like there was like him and then there was that really tall blonde woman?
Yes.
Like you didn't see her for very long, but she was there. Those are two of like kind of like his lieutenants in his army or whatever.
Gotcha. So, but yeah, I mean, so we got to see the backstory of them all fighting with Zeus and the humans and the Amazons, and we got to hear that story. And then they were talking about, I mean, all this. That was actually some stories that Diana's mom was telling her in different movies, and so I was very grateful for that. I didn't even know they were called mother boxes, but honestly, I thought, okay, there's probably no changing it because that's already in the DC, but I thought that name by itself was,
yeah.
Like that you couldn't come up with anything else. So there's these boxes. We got to call them something else besides the box.
I think that there are certain naming conventions within the DC universe that probably could have been given a little more love. I mean, like if I'm being real, like Martian Manhunter is just, I mean, I could totally seeing that as being like this little.
I could see a parody happening. Call me Martian Manhunter.
Dun, dun, dun. You see the title come up. You
Bruce
know?
Wayne goes, you what? Are you sure? I'm going to the papers with this.
It's like kind of name that would be really popular in the 50s, but maybe not so much today.
Man, yeah.
But anyway, it is what it is, and we'll just keep going forward because,
Sure.
I mean, it's all part of the lore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like I said, there's no change in it. It is what it is. But I since I didn't know the mother box existed in the first iteration, and then they're like, "Oh, I need the mother box." And it's so serious, but the name is so terrible. I thought, okay, well, I get it, but cool.
I have a bunch of different places in the film that Zack Snyder ended up replacing the stuff that Joss Whedon did, as well as brand new brand new sequences in the film. So we see Batman in the first version of the film fighting like one of those, I think they're called like permademons or something like that. But in the Joss Whedon version, if you recall, remember he was fighting one on like the rooftops of Gotham or whatever, and he kind of used that other purse snatcher thug dude as kind of like bait. And he was able to take him out, and like the green blood goo from the permademon like splattered across like the bricks on top of that roof. And I think if I remember correctly, there was like some sort of like visual in the blood that Batman saw that I think was like maybe the mother boxes themselves, or I don't know. It was very subtle, but anyway, he ends up replacing that, and instead we have Bruce Wayne. We have like this extended sequence of Bruce Wayne in this Arctic area. I think it's like Iceland or something. And it actually helps to set more of a mature tone. And I'm so glad about that, because that rooftop sequence was one of the cringe moments that I had when I saw the first version of the film. I was like, oh man, I wasn't feeling that. That wasn't that wasn't something I was really cool about. But instead, we see him going through, he's clearly searching for Arthur, who is Aquaman, right? So again, there's just more time. Like, and we've talked recently about this, about how there are movies that we watch where there's not enough time that's spent. Like, for instance, we were talking about, I think it was Raya and the Last Dragon, about how they had all these different vistas that they wanted to go visit, but there wasn't enough time spent at each one of these vistas, at least enough for us to be immersed into the culture, immersed more into the environments and stuff. Just appreciate these different places that are exotic to us. And I thought that was just a really terrific example of, you know, you see him talking with Arthur, you see him talking to the townsfolk. And one of the things that I also had that was a bit of an issue from the first version of the film was when we got to that scene, it felt to me almost as like kind of a throwaway scene with the various like Icelandic villagers that were there. It was like, okay, I could totally see them being extras, and like, okay, you're supposed to be like in this Arctic place and just, look like you're cold, and that's it. Like it was like this obligatory visual that had to be established so they could just kind of get through it, versus this version where suddenly it's like we get an entire song that is sang by the townsfolk, by the locals once Aquaman goes back into the sea. And I was glad that it wasn't just, okay, we're just going to go off to the next scene or whatever, but they actually stayed and they were marinating in that environment just enough where suddenly I bought in. Right. I was like, he was really at this place. Like, this place seems like perhaps it's Nordic or it's Icelandic, like I said. That was something that I appreciated. What do you think?
No, that just goes along with they have 4 hours. They gotta slow it way down and give us more treats and dip us deeper in the milk.
Yes. If I was an Oreo cookie.
So yeah, I picked up on that too when we were watching it. And the whole dialogue with that like the governor or the mayor or whoever was like
the town leader or whatever,
big guy,
the elder. See, if you had an Oreo cookie right now, you would have given me one.
I'd given you half. The half with the cream on it.
Thank you. Would it be double stuff?
No, that's too much cream.
Oh man,
I just like the regular. Just I'm original.
I am a fan of the double stuff myself.
I feel like a double stuff since I've gained the COVID calories.
I feel your pain and your bloatation.
Right. So no, yeah, that whole dialogue with him and Bruce Wayne. Even I have to even tell you about Aquaman's lines and his whole character, his whole demeanor was different in this one than it was in the last movie, which I was definitely grateful for.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I keep on saying when we talk about these comic book movies is I want them to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because no one's looking through the comic going, ooh, this is campy. I like it. Oh, he's making stupid jokes. Oh, huh, that's great. They're going, whoa, this guy is badass.
Yeah.
And that's why that's where you build your fandom. And so I don't want to see them take away from that in the movie.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt that way with the previous version.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that it was an absolute blast seeing Jason Momoa on screen again. And even with the original version of the film, like he was still badass in that. But I mean, even more so to your point, like he was much more serious and had just more of an air of accessible realism that I thought was great. I'm like, man, this is okay. I'm digging this. Like,
yeah.
Let's see what else we got.
I think they took away that scene. Wasn't it in that last Justice League where they're flying over to go where they're going to get to and Aquaman is sitting on Wonder Woman's whip. He's like, we're all gonna die, whatever sort of thing. Wasn't that movie?
So that one was the original take.
Right.
And actually, that is one of the very few scenes I wish they kept because that was so well done. Like the film itself, especially the Zack Snyder version, it's a heavy film. I mean, you are watching this unfold for 4 hours and it is not a chipper movie. Like there's a lot of stuff going on and they're trying to figure out how they're going to be able to prevail in this type of situation. And on the one hand, it's like there were like most of like the moments of levity or comic relief that were removed, I was happy about. But that was the one scene that I personally actually really enjoyed just because Jason Momoa did such a great job executing on that. Because again, he's such a badass. Like he's like this burly man's man and he's stoic and he's Aquaman, right? Like he's basically the ruler of the sea and everything else. And then to see him suddenly like go through this transformation, you're thinking, man, is he having like a little breakdown? Like what's going on? Then he realizes he's sitting on the lasso of truth.
But you guys should think about getting clear.
We're with you till it's done.
Honestly, I think we're all gonna be dead way before that. And you know what? I don't mind. It's an honorable end. But we gotta shut Steppenwolf down. Superman's a no-show. You got no powers, no offense. This guy might be working for the enemy, we don't know. You're tripping over your feet and mine. Oof. You're gorgeous and fierce and strong and I know we went to war with the Amazons, but that was before my time. And you know what? I don't want to die. I'm young. There's shit that I want to do. I just feel like I never really embraced the sea or the land. I've been alone my whole life, but being part of something bigger like this, maybe I'm scared because I'm meant to.
I think that was beautiful.
You say a word about this, you'll meet every piranha I know.
I honestly didn't hear anything after we're all gonna die.
For me, I wish it was still there. I appreciated that. Going over to the Wonder Woman, speaking of Wonder Woman, the bank fight sequence. So that was extended and changed a little bit. There was a moment where once all the fighting was done and Wonder Woman saves the day, how she actually speaks to a little girl who says something to the effect of like,
I want to be just like you.
Yeah, can I be like you someday or something like that? Which I thought was really touching. I like that. I like how, and again, it's taking a moment to take inventory of the set or the environment that you are in. Wonder Woman is in this environment where there are hostages, right? I think in the first version of the film, it's like once she saved the day, that was kind of it and she left. And it was just like, no, that would not happen in real life, like, especially when you see all of these kids, these young girls who are just kids and they're terrified and out of their minds and everything else. And for her to go through and just check on everybody, are you okay? You good? That sort of thing. And then have like just that little brief moment with that girl. I like that.
I thought the Wonder Woman action sequences were just wonderful. I mean, but one thing I'm going to be looking for if and when they make the next one is if she does that kind of crab walkie thing that she does. Because in the first movie and in the second movie and in this movie, she does that where there's always some part where she's rescuing somebody and then she gets down on all fours and starts blocking bullets, but she's kind of squatting and turning when she's doing it. I don't know. This reminds me of a crab walk bullet dodger kind of thing. But I'm glad they took the time also with that one. Just for seeing how crazy these guys were, like they were going to blow up the bank and kill a bunch of people just because they're terrorists and that's what they're going to do. And they were cool with dying. And she had that moment with the guy and she's like, why are you doing this? She's like, we're going to do it sort of thing, and that's that. I mean, it was a longer sequence than that. It wasn't just like, 5 seconds, but even then, I mean, my wife and I were like,
yeah.
Kick some ass!
So cool.
So pivoting over to Steppenwolf's arrival. So when he first arrives on the Amazon island, basically, there are a number of different things. First of all, his armor has changed from the first one for the better. Do you agree?
Yeah, the armor was awesome.
The armor was really, really cool. I really loved how it was constantly kind of like pulsating and moving, and like how like you'd have like these spikes that would suddenly come out as like a defense.
Yeah, it was almost like this reactionary chainmail.
Yes, very much so. And the design of Steppenwolf was almost like kind of a hybrid of like a bull and a shark almost in a way. Like it was very interesting how his body type was, but it was like literally like if a bull could mate with a shark, it was like, because like you think of his mouth, for instance, right? Like his teeth and stuff, it was more of like shark-like. And then even like with some of his movements, the movements were also, when it came to like, with the actual like hand-to-hand combat, had more of that thrashing kind of movement that you'd see like a shark do, like if it was eating a sea otter or whatever, right?
One thing I didn't understand. Do you think that's how he could breathe underwater? Because I
don't know.
They didn't explain that, and all of a sudden, like I thought that one cube's gonna be safe. It's underwater. You can't breathe underwater. Doesn't have gills. He ain't Aquaman.
That is a good question. We'll have to do some online research to see if somebody has the answer for that, because that is a good question. I'm not sure. He's an alien. He's conqueror of many a world. So
you owe us 50,000 more worlds. I'm like, man, that's a lot.
I know. I was sitting there. I'm like,
guy's gonna be dead in like a couple more worlds. This is what it takes.
Steppenwolf is like, oh, come on. I'm on this one right now. I got 2 out of 3 mother boxes. Oh, good. I get to scratch one off. Now I have 49,999 to go. Throw me a bone here, people.
I get it. I messed up, but in 50,000 a little bit extreme.
I think we need to talk a little bit about how long I live, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to kind of fill that quota.
It's like, okay, I get it. You don't want me back. Fine. So
what are my options here? So anyway, he battles against the Amazons. Again, that battle sequence was also updated and changed.
That was so much better.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
In that scene.
Yes.
Amazon! And it was like, it seemed like it was right out of like Spartans, except there was Amazons, and it was just as cool.
I was just about to say the same exact thing. Like ZACK SNYDER, who directed the movie 300, he, in multiple points throughout this film, tapped into his 300 side, and I applaud you for that, good sir, because that is exactly what this film needed. And to see them where the leader said, or the queen says, "Show him your fear."
Yeah, they're like, I'm like,
we have no fear. I was like, oh man,
that was so cool. I got goosebumps.
I like it. Come on. You be walking over here, you be limping back. That's basically what that was.
He's like,
yeah,
I'll be back.
I need some more cockroach permademon thingies.
I'm gonna drink a Gatorade before I come back.
That's actually something worth noting too, is if you notice his face, like he was like, oh, like he was anticipating everybody to cower in fear. They didn't, which I love because again, the first iteration of this film was so one-dimensional in terms of like, I'm the bad guy, cower in fear. And everyone's like, You're just like, wow, this is really generic.
I'm bad, and I'm mean.
I have no control over my appendages.
And I'm big and strong.
You just took the opportunity to show off your bicep, didn't you?
And you are weak.
Anyway, yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up because when they clearly were not afraid of him, they were ready to defend their home to the death. Did you catch that moment where it cuts back to his face and he kind of had this like, oh.
Yeah, I did actually catch that.
It was very brief, but like I'm glad that they put that in there because again, it adds more maturity to his character because again, evil characters also can have like, oh crap moments. You know, they can realize certain things that are going on that are not in their favor, and that makes them not necessarily relatable per se, but it makes them more realistic, more tangible because suddenly it's like, okay, this antagonist has depth, right? Anyway, really, really cool.
Yes.
One of the other things worth mentioning is during that fight, I loved how he had all those arrows that were in his armor and he flexes and he goes, you're just like, crap. Yeah, well, it was kind of a combination between the word crap and cool. Like I'm sitting there like, cool. Cruel. Yeah. I thought that was like a boss. That's what that was. The extended scene of Diana going into the ruins after the flaming arrow was shot by the queen to warn her of what was going on, that was completely new.
Yeah.
And again, it provided a much needed exposition and foreshadow as to what the heck was going on. Because again, most people who are going to see this film, you know, they're not versed in all of the DC comic books, right? And that's not necessarily any fault of anyone's, but you know, when
it is.
When you're watching the movie though, you've got to keep that in mind. And it was so cool because one of my favorite methods of storytelling is when you look at history and you look at like cave drawings, right? Or you look at like hieroglyphs from like the Egyptians or whatever. It's so cool because they tell a story in a visual format that's really, really basic, but actually on the surface itself, it's basic. But then if you actually study it, you're like, wow, this is saying a lot. And there's actually a message that's in there as well. It's not just like, well, we started here and we populated the earth and then something awful happened. Like there are these tales that are told. There are these kind of like warnings for future generations and stuff. I thought it was a very tactful way, but also a shrewd way to be able to get through some much needed exposition as it applies to the ancient war against Darkseid. That was actually the first glimpse that we get of the character Darkseid in a very basic form. Again, really cool because you see like this more basic version of him visually, but it's enough where you're like, ooh, that doesn't look good. And just the overall like ancient hieroglyphic storytelling, especially when it involves Diana, because she's so old. I mean, she's like, what, 5,000 years old or something?
5,000.
And it was just fantastic because also like her day job kind of thing is, you know, she deals with the restoration of all these ancient artifacts and she knows how to speak all these different languages. I mean, it just fit. It was so naturally organic. I'm like, yes, please. Thank you. May I have some more? What'd you think, Steve?
No, yeah, absolutely. And it kind of goes back to, this movie was 4 hours, but if they needed more movies like before this movie, I think, because the reason why it was so long is because they had a lot to explain.
Sure.
And I think if they had more time to have other movies leading up to this, we would have seen a lot more of this happening instead of having one movie to be 4 hours to explain all the backstory. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of where Marvel is stronger, is that they took more time to have each character have their own movie, develop the character, knock the timer over.
I told you once, I'll tell you again. And this is why we can't have nice things.
Glad it's not made out of glass.
Like dealing with a man-baby toddler over here.
So, and that was one of my complaints with the previous version, is that they didn't show us the backstory. They were introducing too many characters too quickly, and we had a brand new story, a brand new enemy, brand new good guys, brand new bad guys, and we just had to deal with it all in like 2 hours or 3 hours or however long it was, and it was just way too much. So plus it goes back to with that previous battle with Zeus and all the humans and everything like that. I mean, it was wonderful.
Well, and let's segue into that. So we see, it first starts out with Diana talking to Bruce Wayne, I think like at his, not necessarily the Bat Cave, but something equivalent to that, because he's working on that airship, right, that drop ship or whatever. So she's narrating, which again, I will totally listen to Gal Gadot tell us some sort of historical story that took place. I mean, her voice is so awesome. And you have this ancient war sequence with humans, Atlanteans, mythical Greek gods like Zeus and Ares, who, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, they still use the actor's likeness with the mustache from the original Wonder Woman movie. He like they took his facial likeness and applied it. He looks a bit more burly in this version.
I was looking for it, but I did miss it. I did miss the mustache, but I looked too quickly and then had to get a glass of water or something.
Yeah. No, it's very fleeting, but it's in there. I'm like, okay, well, sure, we'll roll with it. Artemis was in there as well. That was the woman with the bow and arrow, where like her arm would like charge up and stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah, it was like magic arrows. Yeah. That was a really good sound effect there, Russ.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
Hey, side question real quick. You were mentioning Bruce Wayne working on that like dropship looking thing. Mm-hmm. Where did that thing come from? That come from like the previous movie where like the Batman versus Superman or what?
It did not. They did make a reference as to where they got it started in the movie, but honestly, I don't remember what the quote was. But he was talking to Alfred about it, and somehow like the people he hired, I think, couldn't get everything to work right. So then Bruce just kind of took it upon himself to try and get it. And even he couldn't get it to work, if you recall. Right. Cyborg is the one who finished the job basically on that. Anyway, going back to the ancient war sequence with all these crazy characters. I mean, you see like an older Green Lantern fighter. I don't even know who that person is, but I'm like, it's a Green Lantern.
Yeah, exactly. I told that to my wife. I'm like, that's a lantern. She's like, oh.
It was super cool though. I mean, you see him flying around using his ring, and you have the Green Lantern Corps. I mean, they have, I don't even know how many that exist.
And then it died. The Green Lantern died. Well, you saw the ring like.
Well, and that was crazy too, because Darkseid, it was kind of like, the ring chooses its next master, right? And you see it like almost come up to Darkseid. Darkseid kind of smirks and he's about to get it, and then Artemis like shoots him in the shoulder with an arrow or something, and so the ring goes. Phew. But I mean, talk about a dread-filled moment where I'm in my chair. I'm like, oh, no, don't do that.
Like, oh, so that's what happened, I guess. No, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Okay, good.
The entire sequence itself, it was like a mashup between the movie 300 and like Lord of the Rings. It was like, the Fellowship of the Ring when they were giving their like, ancient war storytelling sequence where you had all the humans and the elves against the orcs and everything else, and Sauron. It was like that, or like Return of the King when you had all these different alliances coming in and fighting together to rid the world of all the evil and stuff. I mean, it was a thing of freaking beauty to see that war go on and seeing these different characters that again may not have necessarily gotten their own standalone film, but you see them make cameos and it doesn't matter. I mean, Zeus was just bad. I mean, I mean, he looked like he was the King Leonidas' brother.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I saw him, I was like, is that Leonidas? No, it's not. But I don't care. That's awesome. And he's sitting there, he's like, and then you see like the King of Atlantis come in with his trident, and he's just like, you see this huge like area of effect damage go. I mean, I'm getting all verklempt over here. My geek meter is going up to 100. Okay, this is awesome. And I don't even know like these characters very intimately. I mean, I'm a huge Batman fan when it comes to the DC universe, but I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs, all these other characters. And as I'm watching this film, I'm like, dude, I want to read these comic books now because there is a whole lot of give me some more. Yes, please, may I have another when it comes to these types of sequences. And it was awesome because you see Darkseid fighting in there, trying to do his thing. And then you, like, I think it was Ares with the huge axe where, like, he comes in and, like, almost, like, does what Thor did to Thanos where it's like, it almost, like, takes off his arm over here. And, like, I mean, again, it's like, that was such a payoff. It was a visual payoff. And it wasn't even the final battle at all. It was like, oh, let me tell you about a story that happened many years ago.
Gather around the fire.
What'd you think?
We've been talking about it for the last 10 minutes, right? It was freaking awesome.
Well, I feel like I'm like really like.
I think you have much more to say about it. I think you were moved more than I was. I thought it was.
You were satisfied with that battle, though, Steve?
Yes. Yes, Russ.
Just want to confirm, Steve. Moving on from that, because we keep talking. Was there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I was going to ask you what you thought about Batman, but I know you got a plethora of questions right here waiting for me.
We'll get to Batman in a minute, Steve.
I'm sure we will.
So another thing that is worth noting, and this is something that I'm very passionate about as being a fan of storytelling, is you never underestimate meaningful character development. I cannot stress that enough. When you have characters that are front and center, that are supposed to be like your protagonists or antagonists, it doesn't matter. You cannot overlook the importance of that. And we noticed how in the first iteration of Justice League, you had characters like Flash, aka Barry Allen. You also had Cyborg, which is Victor Stone. You had Steppenwolf. And you had others like Martian Manhunter and whatnot, who didn't even exist in the first version. But the I think the biggest crimes were the Flash, Cyborg, and Steppenwolf, because there just wasn't any kind of attempt to really give them more of a reason for being there. And I made a list of each one of these characters, like the Flash, for instance. We learned about Barry's average day in his life. And what his relationship really is with his dad. Because in the first film, like, you see a brief scene of him, talking to him on the jail phone, right? That's really about it. But you don't really understand or know even about like how Barry's kind of struggling through his day-to-day life, how he's not sure how to move forward. He clearly wants to make his dad proud. He clearly wants to try and bail his dad out, but he's socially awkward. He's just trying to figure out how he's going to kind of make it throughout each day. And he saves, we see him, like, for instance, as he's trying to like put his pieces, life together, everything else, he's trying to apply for a job, right? Everyone can relate to that. And so he bypasses this really cute girl as he's going into the pet shop, if you recall, and they have kind of a little brief moment together. And then it's just really hilarious how like he's talking to the owner of the pet shop and his resume is like all ripped up and like bent. And I mean, Ezra Miller's execution on this performance I thought was just divine. It was so funny. But again, you see how like this girl that then he had just this brief kind of interaction with going through the door, get into this car accident with the semi truck and everything else. And we get to see Barry Allen do his superpowers, not in his costume, but like he's in his civilian clothes. He's like just an average person, right? And I loved how like when he spun around to save her, how like his shoes ripped open, and just because when you move that quick, like shoes can't handle that sort of thing, right? And then
regular
like
threads and stuff. Yeah,
watching him run barefoot, and then like even like when he's trying to stop, and how like the asphalt is like completely disintegrating and shattering and stuff around his feet and everything else. Again, it's this kind of like slice of life for someone like Barry Allen that we got to witness, and it was so cool. And I did some research on this. That girl that he saved is Iris West, who is the wife of Barry Allen in the comics, and is the aunt to the third Flash called Wally West. So there's significance to this whole thing. And it goes on and says she's a reporter for the Central City news outlet Picture News. Anyway, thank you. Right now we have a much more tangible relationship as an audience with this particular character. We learn about how he has a rule to never go faster than the speed of light. Okay, well, clearly there's something there, right? We need to know what's going on. That acts as foreshadow throughout the film, because clearly he's going to have to break. You're going to have to break your one rule. He calls running fast his speed force. I don't know if you caught that or not. And the ending is truly epic, where all hope is lost. And we'll talk more about the ending later on. But I mean, like, talk about a proper ending. I mean, like if you think of the ending from the first film, I mean, remember how we turned to each other, I think in the theater, we're like,
what is happening
that's
here?
it? Like, weird, that was a lame last battle. You know, you watch this and I'm just like, oh, oh. Like I watched it by myself and I was like looking around like, did you see that? No. What about you back there? Yeah. All right. Am I the only one in this theater? Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyway. Can you turn it down? Yeah. Okay. You woke the kid up, you idiot. Oh, my bad. But it was really cool. It really was. But, you know, the ending forces him to break his one rule, and we get to see him literally tap into his time travel abilities again. Love how they doled it out. They didn't rush it. They didn't even like go into it like crazy or anything like that. They just gave a bit of it, and I am totally on board. Like, I'm like, give me a Flash movie. I want a standalone Flash movie yesterday as a result of this. And I want to have the storytelling continue where it's not just like, oh, look at these cool effects and everything else. I want that exposition. I want to be able to really get to know who Barry Allen is. And part of, you know, he has a little bit of that kind of neurotic quirkiness about him, you know? And I think that is appropriate given the fact that, like, you know, as his character matures and he kind of gets settled into being this superhero known as Flash, in the comics, I mean, he does a fair amount, I would even argue quite a bit, of time travel. That's going to mess with your head because he's always trying to fix things in the past and the future because he's trying to, like, get a certain, like, timeline in a way that doesn't end in some sort of, like, you know, total catastrophe or like, you know, the end of Earth or whatever. And to not go too far off the reservation and digress too much, like, we haven't even talked about the multiverse that exists in DC. Like, there is a very real and present multiverse that exists. It's very similar to, like, you know, Marvel has something like an equivalent to that. But Barry and some of the other characters who play as the Flash are almost like custodians or gatekeepers in a way, because as certain storylines are progressing, maybe like he'll cross over into one of the other dimensions of the multiverse, and then he's meeting up with like other like versions of himself, and then something else gets messed up and he has to do stuff.
Crosses between Netflix and HBO Max. Hey, what? Yeah. Hey, you're me, but I'm you. But you're a different actor. I'm doing something really cool over here.
You know what? I think Ezra made a cameo on a recent episode of The Flash, because they have that. I think it's either, I want to say Netflix. It's either Netflix or Amazon Prime. Yeah. but he actually met up with the Netflix version of The Flash because they had one of those moments, which I thought, very nice. Anyway, I'll stop right there because I can keep talking about that. Going over to Cyborg. This is a major success story of the film because the first iteration of the film, we don't really get to know Victor at all. I mean, like
nothing.
Like you see him be able to transform himself into some really cool weapons, and he could fly a bit and that sort of thing. But I mean, he was really in the background. And this iteration, he is front and center. I mean, he is a pivotal character for how the story plays out. And it's not even like, oh, it's a mandatory thing based off his skill set. Like, no, like even the backstory of him as a person and the character arc that you see throughout this film, I'm rooting for him the entire way. Were you?
Yeah, I was. And you mentioned earlier you wanted a Flash movie, and that goes back again that they should have. I even think they should have held off releasing the ZACK SNYDER version of this movie until they gave us a full Flash movie and a full Cyborg movie, because they still went. I mean, even if you take those stories, those little bits that they gave us with both characters in this movie, if you take that away, the movie's still great. I mean, it's still a very, very good movie.
Yeah.
But we still want that full exposition of an entire movie like Superman or Batman, whoever. And so, yes, we got some of the backstory, and I guess, maybe they gave him about, I don't know, I didn't time it, but probably about 45 minutes-ish, about, maybe an hour to.
Well, what's nice is that they sprinkled it continuously throughout the film. I mean, we see him as a football player in high school or college. I think it was college. And we get introduced to his mom.
Right.
His mom didn't even exist, I don't think, in the first iteration. We find out she's a doctor, and that there's like this kind of like a little bit of a dysfunctional family dynamic going on where the dad is clearly engrossed in his career, and he's not a present father for the kind of the moments that matter kind of thing. We see the fateful car crash that ends up killing his mother and causes him. Yeah, just totally maiming him.
Yeah. But I found myself asking, like, okay, well, where did Barry get his abilities? Because it wasn't from his dad, or at least not that we know of. I mean, his dad doesn't even bring that up in prison, or they don't give us any sort of clues or messages about other abilities in the family. They just say, hey, it's Barry Allen is cool. This is what he does, and moving on. And so, I mean, I definitely take it, because it's cool, but I definitely want more of that backstory, and who knows when we're going to get a Barry Allen movie. Yeah, I mean, we could watch it on another streaming service, but, it's not like a Warner Brothers DC movie.
Right.
It's not an origin story. But with that sequence, though, when he saves that girl after he applies at that pet store or wherever, that dog walking service. That was also another part where I think they took a bit too long. Like, they had a bunch of the cool sequences when he rushes out and his clothes can't hold up with going the speed of light, and he's
not quite. He's not going quite the speed of light.
No,
he's going really fast.
100% cotton. Going too much.
Like my lightning arms.
And he pokes through the glass.
Oh,
and the glass,
that was so cool. I love how it almost like bends first before it shatters.
Yeah. So you had all these cool moments, and then like he locks eyes with her, and there was definitely some cool romantic stuff going on. But
chemistry,
that was also a scene that took too long because it showed him and then her, and then him getting a little closer to her, and then him like brushing her hair aside, and then him getting a little bit closer, and then it took just too long. I thought, okay, I get it. He's moving really fast, and they have to slow it down for us to understand that he is moving fast, and yes, there is a moment, but I got what they were trying to do, and I was like, okay, move it on a little bit. Not that, I mean, I know I'm probably nitpicking a little bit, but I started to see that happen again and again, like throughout the movie, where they did take advantage of that 4 hours, and some scenes were definitely stretched like just a bit too much.
I mean, maybe like by a hair, but like honestly, I've appreciated them spending the time that they did in those different types of sequences. Like, I didn't feel like I was looking at my watch or thinking like, oh, this is kind of awkwardly too long. And what was funny about that sequence too was like, I loved how like, you know, at first it's like the whole like, oh, like he likes her kind of thing. And then he sees the hot dog. He's like, hey, he takes the hot dog. I mean, again, it's so indicative of the persona they created for Barry Allen, which is great. It's like, yeah, like he would do that. That's a lot of fun.
They did change up. Like they did take out his running from the last one. We're all looking at each other in the theater going, that's how they're going to portray him running the speed of light. Yeah, I'm going really fast. Yeah. So I did like how they slowed it down and showed the effect of, yeah, he's moving really quick. This is not going to be entertaining if we show him just going, you know, so this is how we're going to do it. But so good on them.
Going back to Cyborg, one of the other things that I thought was really cool is that we get to discover that his body was, in fact, the cyborg body was created by one of the mother boxes.
Right.
And that reinforced the notion that these things, they're not just there to be evil. They're actually kind of like neutral in a way because they kind of do whatever the opposite of what happened is going on. So like, you know, if you like got maimed, it's going to regenerate your body the best way it knows how. Versus like, oh, you have a perfectly working planet, we'll just destroy it. Like it, so you could see how like, oh, it really depends on the user, like who in whose hands these mother boxes will reside in. That's where a lot of these decisions get made. And so I really like that too, because now it's like, oh wow, like Cyborg now becomes a key element to the mother boxes because 95% of his body now was created by this very thing. And so naturally there's got to be some kind of interactivity with it. There's got to be some sort of like affinity.
I didn't grasp the entire idea or concept of what the mother boxes did or were. Like, if you compare the mother boxes to the Infinity Stones, you know that each stone represents something.
Right.
And the person who wields all the stones, well, they have a ton of abilities, then they can make the entire universe a very good or bad place to live. Mm-hmm. But you knew what each stone represented. The mother boxes, they were kind of alive and they kind of weren't. They didn't have like a, you know, alive in the sense that they had a personality or something, but then when they synchronized, something was going to happen. But I wasn't clear. Maybe you picked it up, but I wasn't clear of what was going to happen once they synchronize, to the extent of the damage or the catastrophe that would transpire, and why. And we were told that if Cyborg, you know, plugs into them and is able to desynchronize, mm-hmm. that the boxes are going to figure out his weak spots and try to attack that. But why would they do that? You know, there's a bunch of just whys. I didn't pick up on what was how they got, you know, manifested or what their reason for being was and what they do. And, you know, I just kind of felt myself in guessing land going, okay, well, maybe this is why, maybe it's the other reason, or I'll just go with it, whatever.
So they did in the film, they did talk about how the mother boxes themselves are this very advanced ancient technology.
Right.
And how to many species and civilizations, like they would interpret it as being magic, right? Because it was so advanced. But there is a logic to them. They are basically these instruments, like I was saying earlier, like you can, if you know how to manipulate them correctly, then you can get them to do certain things, cause certain things that are really amazing or really terrifying. And again, it depends on who's wielding it, right? And one of the things I'm not 100% on is I don't know if like every planet has their own mother boxes, or if those mother boxes, I think at least when we watched the Ancient War take place, we saw those three wizardy looking alien guys coming out of the ship with the mother boxes. So I think like they got them from somewhere else or something like that. And I don't know if like because Darkseid lost that war, that I guess like the boxes ended up staying there instead of going back with them. And so Darkseid's like really been interested in reobtaining them. So again, I'm not an expert in this. We'll have to do some research or talk to a friend who like is an expert in this whole thing. But anyway, going back to Cyborg, you keep T-boning my Cyborg thing.
I'm sorry.
One of the other things about Cyborg that I really appreciated was how they made it a point to showcase what other abilities he has, because we know that he has the ability to transform his appendages and stuff into these crazy weapons. But what about other types of abilities? And they go into talking about how he has the ability, like if he wanted to hack in to all of the nuclear armories around the world and completely decimate everything, he could do that if he wanted to. If he wanted to manipulate Wall Street and the banking institutions, he could do that too. And there was a really poignant scene where you see him kind of exploring that as his dad is warning him, like, it's not so much about like, what you can do as it is, you have to be mindful of not doing those things that are possible that you can do. And during that time, you see him kind of stumble upon this one woman. She's a waitress. She doesn't have very much money. I think she had maybe like, I don't know, $25, maybe even less than that in her bank account. She's a very benevolent person. He's able to see like all these different good deeds. She's a good mother, all this stuff. So then he hooks her up because she needs help, because she looks like she may be kind of getting evicted or something. We're not quite sure. So there is this whole other dimension that goes on where it's like, wow, okay, he's not just some sort of military weapon. He actually has access to all this different stuff that really was glossed over in the first film. Like I think the only kind of indication that we got from the first film was when Gal Gadot was looking around, as Diana, and like it's Cyborg that hacks into Bruce Wayne's computer and says, meet me here right now. Like that remained the same from both movies. Watching his father sacrifice himself just as their relationship was starting to heal, huge. We never saw his dad do that in the first movie.
I don't even know what happened to his dad. Well, I don't remember.
You mean in this film?
In the other one?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure either. I don't recall. But in this one, though, I mean, talk about you see this estranged relationship between father and son. And you see how the father has been attempting to reach out to his son to make amends, and his son wants nothing to do with him. He lost his mom. He was never there during like the special times that meant a lot to him. I mean, he's got a bone to pick with his dad. And we see how throughout the film, how they have this kind of this time of healing, to the point where like now there's like this respect between the two of them. There's this love again between father and son, and he ends up sacrificing himself in order to heat up that particular mother box to create almost like a natural tracker beacon, so they know where this base is. And again, the actor who played the dad, I mean, you talked about in the previous film when we did a movie review in 2017 of the first one, you were talking about how like he's from Terminator 2, how
he's from Skynet.
Yeah, he fits really nicely into this world, and he is in fact just a really like, I love watching his facial performance. Like I mean, when he was in there and he knew what he was doing, and you see Victor, who's like realizing what his dad's doing, and he's freaking out, and the look on his dad's face is just nothing but pure love.
He can act. He does a lot of that emotional, nonverbal expression acting with his face, and I think he does very well with like the pitch in his voice, because he can sound very authoritative, but he can also sound very calming.
Yeah,
like very calming.
Oh, and even in Terminator 2, I mean, you see him, he is freaked out.
Yeah.
Really great actor. You see Cyborg in the film later on. He is key to dismantling the mother boxes. And we saw that to a certain extent in the first film, but it didn't drive the point home. It's like, no, like we can't do this without Cyborg. This is a very big deal. And while he's going through all that, he has that deadly premonition, right? Where like, Earth is getting destroyed. Wonder Woman is dead. She has those coins on her eyes. Darkseid is stabbing Aquaman. There's a black suited Superman in the Batcave holding some sort of charred remains. I don't know if that's supposed to be Lois Lane or if it's supposed to be Batman. I don't even know. But you do see a pissed off Superman holding Batman's cowl with a dead Green Lantern in the foreground, a portrait of Thomas Wayne in the rubble, Diana's shield, Aquaman's trident sticking there. Even like the little truce card that Joker gave, you see it ripped and it's flying by and stuff. Really haunting imagery. And you're thinking, wait, is this just an illusion? Is this a preview of things to come? What the heck is going on? But because he had that, it suddenly, again, is yet another reason why his character has such purpose in this film. And I just love it. It's like, yeah, like, of course he's going to have something like that. I mean, the dude's dialed into the 3 mother boxes.
Well, I thought every character, at first I was thinking, oh, this is all going to be about Superman. And then I was thinking, oh, well, they had Barry Allen. I mean, they really need Barry Allen. And then another part, I'm like, man, they really need Cyborg. So it seemed like every character had like their moment of, well, thank goodness we have you here to do, job X. Except for Batman.
Well, it's very true because they did showcase their value much better in this film. Because again, even the Flash, for instance, right? Like in the first iteration, it was like, oh, I just kind of push people out of the way. And throughout the rest of the film, you're like, I remember liking the fact that he wasn't like all the this trained fighter like Wonder Woman or Aquaman or Batman or Superman. Again, it's nice to have a variety. But what else is in his skill set that makes him of use or has value? And again, at the end of this movie, both Flash and Cyborg are the two that if they weren't there, everybody's screwed. And it was phenomenal because I think the expectation is always, oh, we're going to get to the end battle and Superman will save the day. Right. Or, it'll be Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, kind of like the trinity of the main superhero, the AAA or A-class heroes or whatever, right? And everybody else is just going to be background. And I loved how that got flipped to the point where they were also doing stuff that was very important, but to have there be enough thoughtfulness to really bring these two characters that were, let's be real, overlooked in the first iteration, bring them more into the fold and everything else, I thought it was genius. Steppenwolf. So we've talked a bit about him already, but we learned that he's a disgraced general. This is awesome. This is one of those things where, again, backstory, character development. He's not just a one-dimensional, I'm a bad guy. You realize, oh, wow, this alien has a past.
Why do you want to destroy everything?
Yeah.
Why?
Has anybody ever told you have a serious impulse control problem? This is counterproductive. Don't destroy worlds. Bad.
Anger management.
Yeah, anger management.
Hashtag.
Yeah. Anyway, I love the fact that we did get a glimpse into some of his backstory where he has this relationship that is not hunky-dory with Darkseid or Desaad or anyone else. We even see him complain to Desaad saying, listen, does it really have to be like this? And Desaad was like, you are here because of your self-pride. Your self-pride puts you there and you betrayed, Darkseid, yada, yada.
Oh, come on.
Well, and I loved how he was, he was pleading. He was trying to do a plea bargain, but he was just look, I've learned my lesson. I've taken out those that have taken on the throne of Darkseid, yada, yada. But again, this is the good stuff. This is the kind of stuff where suddenly it's oh, now we understand his motivation. He's not just oh, I'm a destroyer of worlds. What's up?
Yeah.
Meaning. He doesn't even necessarily want to destroy Earth. That's the thing. He's doing it out of necessity. You're just fan-freaking-tastic. That's a wonderful thing to have when you're telling a story because if I were to compare him to say someone like Thanos Thanos has a completely different motivation, doesn't he? He's a mad titan. He is driven by his passion to try and right the wrongs and all the horrible situations of the universe by eliminating half the civilization and lives of the universe, which is horrible. That's completely different than someone who literally is serving a sentence. Like, this dude is a POS on his own alien world. He got busted, and now he has to try and make amends by going through and taking out 50,000 worlds. It's like,
be even more of a POS.
But I mean, it's like, it's one of those situations where you're like, oh, wow. Okay. This changes things, right? So yeah, I mean, he's attempting, not only that, he's attempting to earn his way back home because he can't go home. Like, he has been exiled from his home. And this is his way of trying to regain favor with Darkseid to come back home. This is great. This is not a protagonist. This is a villain. And there are certain details here that I can relate to on some level where it's like, you know, obviously I'm not a destroyer of worlds, and I think everything he's doing is bad, but it's like, oh, he is fallible. He made a mistake. He made a bad decision that cost him. Now, his decision has really cost him a whole lot more than, say, someone like you or I, were like, you know, for instance, like if I decided to sleep in an extra 30 minutes, now I'm paying for it because I'm late to, you know, getting my daughter to school on time or something. It's a little bit lower on the gauge. Anyway, he also, we find out that he's the one who actually controls the parademons. If you notice, that was his army.
Right.
That was not necessarily Darkseid controlling all of them. Like, that was kind of more his deal. Although we did see what appear to be more parademons in the realm of Darkseid.
Parademons look like those beings from God of War. Like
a little bit.
Fairy men or
cockroach men.
Cockroach men. Except they have like bows and staffs and swords, and these other ones have guns.
Laser guns. Alien
something
guns.
kind of guns.
Some kind of
laser plasma grenade launchers.
Something. Another thing that we've already talked about, but I think it's worth driving home the point on, is that he answers to Darkseid. When I think of the Avengers movie, right? Up until that point, like we see Loki as kind of the main bad guy, right? But if you think about the lead up to the final battle in the Avengers movie, we see how Loki has been introduced to Thanos, right? He's on that kind of rocky planet thing, right? And even Thanos has a lieutenant that's there with like all like the 8 fingers or whatever, you know? And there is kind of a similar parallel in the sense where like Loki doesn't necessarily owe Thanos anything, but Loki identifies that Thanos is no one to be trifled with. And because Loki has his own delusions of grandeur because he wants to get back at like his brother and everything else, like he goes down this completely awful path. But the point is that a hierarchy has been established, which is super cool. Between, you have people who you think are like the main baddies, and suddenly you're like, oh, no, you're kind of middle of the road. There's like all these other people that exist, and maybe people that we don't even know yet that exist. This was a big strength, I feel like, in this film, because now it's no longer about Steppenwolf, which we had a problem with in the first film. We're like, where does he come from? Like, what's he doing here? Why does he look goofy? Like, what's the deal? Now we see, oh, there's Desaad. There's Darkseid. There's some of these other folks as well. What'd you think about that, Steve?
It seems like we're hitting on the same points kind of repeatedly. I mean, I am picking up everything that you're throwing down with the characters and the backstory and the imagery and the time that they're telling us all the story, and I get it.
You
Russ.
agree?
I agree. Yes.
Let us move on. Martian Manhunter.
Oh, jeez.
Now, what I think is really cool about this particular character is I did not feel like they shoehorned this character into the movie at all. Like, if you think about it, the character barely had any screen time at all.
Right.
But the amount that he was on screen was great. And I think it's fantastic because it sets up yet another character who, as we all know in the comics, he is a member of the Justice League. He's actually quite powerful. I think he's almost as powerful as Superman. And he acted as a conduit almost to a much bigger and broader DCU, right? It symbolizes how there are, in fact, other heroes out there. And I love how, like for instance, at the end, like when he's talking to Bruce Wayne and he's introducing himself and everything else, that essentially symbolizes how the deeds and the acts of the Justice League, like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, that transpired at that time, it's literally inspiring other metahumans to come forward and say, I want to make a difference too. I want to help. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
But it's got to make you ask and or wonder how much of Superman's foster mother, I guess you could say, did he play?
Martha?
Yeah.
I don't think he played her very much at all. I think what he did was he turned into Martha for just that visit to Lois. To get her to stay because Martian Manhunter... What?
To go out.
Well, he knew that she was the key to Superman.
Right, but he didn't want her to stay inside. She, meaning he, wanted her to go out because she needed to be there at the right time to convince Superman not to kill everybody. And yeah, I remember.
So there was like this kind of like gentle little push. But I mean, I don't think it's like, oh, like the entire time, like Superman's been hugging on his stepmom. It's like, oh, I'm actually getting chummy with Martian Manhunter.
Martian Manhunter.
Another quick note is that
yes, go ahead.
Harry Lennox, who is the actor for Martian Manhunter, if you recall, he was also the general in Man of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Love that guy.
Yeah.
The guy, again, like tremendous actor.
He was in the second Matrix also.
You're right. He was. Very true.
Thank you. Not
an easy thing to try and pull off a character like Martian Manhunter. But again, it reminds me of Jason Momoa. Like you cast these people correctly, and Jason Momoa can single-handedly take on the mantle of Aquaman that, let's be real, for decades was sneered at or made fun of or whatever. And suddenly you see who is Aquaman, and all those people instantaneously went, oh, I was just playing over there. That's cool. That's cool. I mean, he made Aquaman awesome.
By the way, they changed his armor in this one.
Whose?
Aquaman's, Russ.
Well, it's because this film takes place before the standalone Aquaman film. If you recall, in the Aquaman film, he starts out with that same armor from this film, and then he gets the official Aquaman armor by the end of the standalone Aquaman film.
I don't remember.
Trust me. Let's see here, Steve. There's a new scene showing alien scouts dragging Atlantean citizens from the ocean.
Yeah, that was terrible.
And we see this like mechanized crab looking thing. I looked it up. It's called Starro, which apparently is a mechanized parasite hive mind that's found in DC Comics that can read memories. So that was a thing to that there.
Pick that up, yeah.
Snyder extended the Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen driving away from Barry's lair.
I remember that, yeah. And then Mercedes concept car, yeah.
Did you see the billboard that they drove by?
No, but I think my wife commented on it.
It said, "You are not alone."
You're right.
That is an official slogan of a suicide prevention organization that exists in the United States. And I think that was kind of, I don't know, like the subtle thing, because his daughter, unfortunately, I think committed suicide. And I'm trying to remember what it's like. It's AFSP. I know the SP stands for suicide prevention. I think it's like American something or other. I can't remember exactly what it is. But again, I thought it was really nice to be able to put something like that in there, because that is something that is to be taken very seriously, and that the messaging could not be more true, in the sense that you are in fact not alone if you are in that type of mindset. So I thought that was a really touching, just a little add in there. We see, okay, another thing that's really cool, we see Alfred make new Batman gauntlets able to absorb Kryptonian energy. This totally sets up a different encounter with Superman. We haven't even talked about the updated battle sequence when Superman is resurrected and he doesn't know where he is or what's going on or what else. What'd you think?
No, that's what I thought too. I'm like, I don't remember. I mean, like I keep on saying, the first iteration was totally forgettable. I really don't. I remember the scene when Barry runs around and then Superman's able to kind of look at him. You know,
I love that.
Yeah,
I think that was still in this one.
That was still in this one. Yeah. So yeah, he has the gauntlets and he's able to fend off Superman a little bit. One thing I wish they put in there was someone should have come forward and said, hey, Cal, what's up? You're back. Okay, we got to explain a couple things to you, because they all just kind of stood against him, all like landed, looked at him with mean scowls on their face. Not like we're going to kick your butt, but almost like, okay, we're here, we're armored, we're big we're big buff bad people. Not,
they were wary because again, I mean, if you put yourself in their shoes, they literally just witnessed someone coming back from the dead.
I get that.
So I mean, not only is it a person, it's Superman.
Right. I get that. But I mean, they're superheroes. And so they've seen a lot of stuff.
I'm just saying, I think that was the reason as to, I mean, I understood. I got it. I mean, if I was there, I'd be doing the same thing, kind of like, okay, is he good? Is he normal? Like, because if he's not normal, then this is going to turn really sour.
But the first thing you do is show that you don't mean any harm. And so when you appear and you look scary and you got guns and you got swords and you got, whatever, and you don't know these faces because you're just trying to figure out like you were in a very dark place, not be able to see much. And all of a sudden now you see everything and you're figuring out you definitely want people to be nice to you. Hey, considering what's going on, hello.
Well, they didn't know him. Here's the other thing too. So Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg have never been introduced to Superman. They don't know him on a personal level. Now, Wonder Woman was briefly introduced to Superman and Batman versus Superman because she makes a cameo in that film, but even that was really brief. So it's not like if you came back from the dead, I'd give you a big hug because you're my brother. Like, oh, what's going on? Like to them, it's like, okay, I have heard the tales of Superman, and we're hoping that like he's gonna be like how he was. Like we hope he hasn't gone off the deep end. We have no idea what we're dealing with here. We are in uncharted territory, and I think that there's kind of a moment of kind of like a pregnant pause of being stunned almost, because you're just like, wow, okay. Like first of all, we're seeing him for the first time. We just watched him get resurrected for the first time, and now like we're trying to like feel him out basically.
Yeah. And there was somebody, I forgot who it was, but because I literally just finished the movie tonight. There was somebody who said something about Lois Lane where Superman recognizes Lois because, of course, he's got some feelings for her, a little bit, proposed. But also someone else, that same person said that Lois was the first person who was not trying to do him harm. And so that's why also he keyed on like getting away from laser shooting Batman to like, oh, I'll stop because you're an innocent person not trying to hurt me, and therefore I don't want to hurt you. And so and I keyed on that before that line was even there because they all looked relatively menacing, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And so I mean, it's interesting to hear your version of it because I totally got a different perspective.
No, that's totally fair. One of the things that I also liked about that particular fight was how they changed up when like Batman comes out and how Superman deals with Batman. Because if you recall, he picks up Batman kind of like by his face in the first one, and he does say a line that I thought was pretty cool in the older movie, which was, "You won't let me live, and you won't let me die, You know, like, and you can tell, like, he's just so mad at Batman. I mean, he could just crush his face right there if he wanted to. And Batman had told Alfred to bring out the big guns, and Lois Lane was the big guns, right? So when she comes out, then all of a sudden he sees her and he forgets about Batman and, you know, tosses him like a rag doll. In this version, you don't hear anything about, like, bring out the big guns or anything like that. It's like she just happens to be there because, if you recall, she was going to his memorial site one last time.
Right.
And when you see him going after Batman, he doesn't pick him up at all, but he's using his eye beams. I mean, he's trying to fry Batman. And luckily he has those gauntlets. And again, it's just great because you see them in action, but like you see how like one of them gets too hot and he has to rip it off and he only has one left and stuff. That I thought was really cool. Like and even some of the fighting sequences that led up to that were extended as well. So I thought, okay, thumbs up for me on that. One of the lines that I did like that was added was Alfred says something about like all the king's horses or something like that. But in there he talks about, he says, if you can't charge the bull, then don't wave the red cape at it.
Right.
And I thought that was a really clever way of a play on words, but I think it really means a lot. There was a lot of weight behind that. There's new footage of Lois Lane at her apartment before Superman gets resurrected, where she's still mourning the loss of Superman, and you find out that she's pregnant. Like she's taken like the little pregnancy test stuff and everything else, and
super baby.
Even at the end of the film, I think Bruce Wayne congratulates Clark because you see her carrying in what appears to be kind of like a little like baby basket, like a little bassinet thingy. I don't know if you caught that.
I caught the fact that she had the pregnancy test. I didn't see the bassinet.
Okay. There's new footage of Clark walking through his spaceship. Did you catch that toward the end? He's barefoot. Yes. He's walking through and he's hearing the voices of both his biological father as well as his stepdad.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I did too.
Like it was a complete return to Man of Steel. And you and I both really cherished that film. Like that was such a great movie. Great father-son type of dynamics that are there. And I loved how they took the time.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to come here and grab my effects and then take off. Again, he's immersing us into this place that, quite honestly, I mean, we've kind of like ran into on a couple of occasions, did what we needed to do and everything else, and then ran back out. But like it transformed what was kind of a hostile environment, or at the very least, like an unpredictable environment, to one of home, to familiarity, to finding his core, his center, his being at peace. And I thought that was really cool because it was just a poignant, reflective moment. And the flight sequence, if you recall, when he dons the black suit, that flight sequence was like exactly the same as if you recall in Man of Steel. Like when he first takes off and you see his fist on the ground, you see the pebbles and stuff start to levitate and everything else. Love that. Because again, it's like this poetry. It's like it comes full circle back around, and that stuff wasn't in the first movie.
Right.
I did some research too about the black suit because I was thinking, okay, is this just like this a new skin, a new aesthetic? Is this just to make it get people talking? The black suit is actually a nod to the black suit Superman wore in the comic books after his resurrection in the comic books. And this suit isn't just for looks; it's designed for healing, absorbing solar energy, which is why we see him soaking up the sunlight. Like he's out in outer space and he's doing this because he needs to charge up. That's like, there's your logic. There's your explanation. Oh my goodness, everything is intertwined. It's amazing when these things come together.
Life is so much better when you tie the knots. Instead of leaving your laces just out in the open for you to trip on all the time. Wondering why does that not knotted?
I get knotted up just thinking about it.
I know.
New sequence. Bruce Wayne is telling Diana about his vision he had, which I know you haven't seen Batman vs. Superman, but in that film, there was this moment where he actually has this vision of the Flash coming to him. You can't quite tell what's going on, but he's apparently trying to warn Bruce. In fact, Barry even says, is this the wrong time? I'm not sure. Like he's not, he's kind of yelling and he's in this weird dimensional state and stuff like that. So he ends up talking to Wonder Woman saying, man, like, cause he was sitting in that same chair and he's like, I saw Barry, right? If you recall, he's like, I saw him appear to me right there. He just figured it, like it was in fact a sign. It wasn't by happenstance. He didn't dream it up, but like it was actually kind of more of a premonition of darker things to come. And that directly ties into the epilogue sequence of the dream state that Bruce Wayne has with him as Batman and having this weird ragtag group of people in this like desolate wasteland. It's like post-apocalyptic world and Joker is working with them and everything. So let's talk about that sequence for a moment. What did you think of Jared Leto?
I was actually hoping they would have Joaquin Phoenix there. I mean, I heard through the grapevine that they were going to put Jared Leto as a small scene, and I thought that's fine. But I thought how cool would it have been if we saw Joaquin Phoenix there as the Joker? That would have been awesome. But yeah, I was trying to put the pieces together with that whole post-apocalyptic. What are we doing here? Who's angry at what? Why? What's happening? And then that whole sequence with Joker, I think that again was another scene. Yes, it was the epilogue, but that took way too long where Batman's looking at Joker and then Joker's looking at Batman and then he's like, and then he's giving him the card and then I don't know. I didn't want it to be quick, but I thought they just took it way too long. Like, I get it. Okay, let's move on. And I thought Jared Leto was trying a bit too hard, like with the Joker laugh. Like he just couldn't laugh like the Joker. He was like forcing a cackle, which didn't seem...
He was trying to go for more of like a sickly cackle.
Yeah, or something. That didn't work for me whatsoever. After hearing Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix that all did their own versions that all worked, and then Jared Leto goes... I'm like, no, that doesn't work. That's not going to be me. I don't know about that.
I actually really liked his performance on it because it was, again, it's his take on the Joker. It was different. I actually liked it more than what he did in Suicide Squad. I didn't really care too much for what I saw in Suicide Squad. In this version, though, I was really digging the performance, and the dream state is such where it's a lucid state, right? Like you don't know what's real, what's not. Is this just a dream? Is this a premonition? Is this foreshadowing in terms of like what could happen in future installments of standalone DC films, as well as like the sequel to Justice League? It's like they're flirting with all these possibilities. And again, I think it is wonderful that they included this because again, that's part of good storytelling. Is like, you don't want to like come to the end and be like, and they lived happily ever after. Clunk, the end. Like you want to be able to give a wink and a nod about certain things that, hey, you know what? If we want to go there, we could go there. And that particular epilogue where you see the sequence where Superman is unhinged. We don't know what is going on, what has caused him to be this way. But basically, what I took from it was like Superman went AWOL and the world is totally devastated. And you have these unlikely allies like the Joker's working with Batman and everything else. I mean, you see like Mara or whatever
Mara, yeah.
Yeah, from Atlantis, who's out of the water with them, and everybody's got a bone to pick with Superman or whatever. And then you see Superman come, and you're just like, man, this is frightening in a comic book kind of way.
Well, didn't you like in your Injustice game? Doesn't like I don't want to say I don't name the baddie wrong, but I want to say it's Brainiac.
Yes,
doesn't he like possess Superman at some point?
Kinda. And Brainiac is another villain that I don't think that they've explored in the Zack Snyder world of Justice League, which, I mean, again, even playing Injustice 2 and seeing Brainiac in there, he's a cool villain. I mean, I think that would be that'd be pretty swell to see him come into the fold. But I think it was, it's easy to like all of a sudden just kind of look at it and get confused and think, wait, why is Batman wearing like a weird brown trench coat? And why are we in this weird deserty kind of state? And why is he holding guns? Because he doesn't use guns and that sort of thing. But if you take a step back and you just let it flow, then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like there are all these different types of avenues that they could take. Maybe they won't, but that's part of the fun of having an open-ended cliffhanger, right? Like an open-ended story is like, okay, maybe this is an alternate reality, right? Maybe there's something that has not transpired yet that will. I mean, this is why I am just so fascinated by the Back to the Future trilogy. As a kid and even today as an adult, is like the notion that like certain things are set in motion and how like if you have the ability to time travel, how you can really make a mess of things. You can also fix certain things, but that it's amazing how you have that butterfly effect go on. So
did you catch what he said about Batman adopting the boy Wonder?
Yeah.
And him being dead? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was cool. So good.
So good, Russ.
There is another new scene that I think is worth talking about too briefly, which is the scene where Superman actually visits Alfred. Like Alfred is by himself.
Right.
And you see him come together and they have this civil discourse between the two of them. I mean, it's literally like the two gentlemen in the world of DC have a moment to just kind of chat. Have a gentleman's chat. There's no secret
agenda.
Yeah, there's no secret agenda or anything else like that. And I found it very refreshing. It was like, wow, like once this is all over with, I could totally see Clark and Alfred hanging out, a little sporty.
Hello, Master Kent. Well, Alfred doesn't really have anything to prove. His family, his everything is Bruce Wayne, and so he doesn't have any abilities. He's the guy behind the scenes, and so he is not a threat.
Yeah.
And so I'm not gonna say he's a neutral party, but I mean he's not gonna tell Superman to do anything, and he's not gonna change anybody's plans. And so Clark has no other reason to be anything other than civil with him.
Yeah. Did you like that scene?
Yeah, it was fine.
Okay.
It was fine. I liked how Alfred,
I mean, I didn't expect that scene to exist, to be honest. I mean, I figured like, oh, Superman's going to go and he's going to join up with the others and yada, yada, yada. But like just being able to like, it wasn't like Bruce Wayne was there with Alfred and Superman comes or whatever. It's like literally like Alfred's just kind of, hanging out at the little, I don't know, home away from home kind of place. And Superman kind of shows up and it's not like Alfred's like, what are you doing here? He's not afraid or anything. They have this normal conversation. It's like, huh, that was like I said earlier, that was refreshing. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to figure that Alfred knows all the plans. And so once everybody leaves, Alfred's got nothing to do but sip $500 wine.
Cognac.
Yes, I shall wait upon their arrival and just sip this.
Oh, wait, do you want me to control the Batwing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
this down.
oh my goodness.
Yeah. I am so DUI.
So, but he would know the plans. And I mean, there were sequences where Bruce Wayne was like, yeah, Superman's got to be there and he'll show up. He will definitely show up. So he's mentioned him quite a bit. So the fact that he does show up after Bruce Wayne's already said that, I would figure that he wouldn't act too surprised.
Before I forget, I have to tell you about that woman who's like the lieutenant of Darkseid. Mm-hmm. Her name is Granny Goodness. So if you thought Mother Box was a little, I mean, I'm just going to put that out there for you.
DC has some issues naming stuff cool.
What did you think of the soundtrack?
The soundtrack was wonderful. As I said in the beginning, that was definitely memorable. When Superman was on screen, you got little hints of like his theme music, but very subtle. And then, of course, when Wonder Woman was taken center stage, you got her theme music playing. And yes, and it wasn't like they played it, 100% fully loud. Like this is just all Wonder Woman all the time right now, or all Superman. They had it mostly in the background, but they had it tied in to maybe some original scoring, or at least like the transition points were original scoring, but into the other theme music. I thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, Tom Holkenborg, who has worked with Hans Zimmer in the past, was responsible for the new soundtrack. And that was surprising because Danny Elfman did the soundtrack to the original Avengers film, and there were parts of it that I appreciated at the time when I saw, or I should say rather hear, his efforts when it came to that. However, I totally prefer this over what Elfman did in the first iteration of the film. In terms of the more of like the music inspired by, there is one song that I wish Snyder left in, which is when you see Aquaman like drinking that bottle of whiskey or whatever, and he's going down the dock toward the huge crashing waves. They play in the new version a song that's called "There Is a Kingdom," and it replaced "Icky Thump" by the White Stripes, which was in the first one, where it's like that much more kind of punk rock. And he's like drinking his thing, and he like smashes, he litters.
Oh, right.
Littering in the ocean.
Yeah, littering in the ocean. You're like, aren't you just be
It's so funny because I'm so conflicted with that. We're like, on the one hand, it's so badass. I mean, like, it's so Jason Momoa. He's sitting there, he's like drinking, and he smashes the thing, and then he puts his arms out for no reason. He's just like, come at me, bro.
And by bro, I mean waves.
Yeah, you see the waves crash. I'm like, okay, that was such a great visual spectacle, but no, shame, don't litter in the ocean. Anyway, I think that was totally unintended. I think it was kind of like one of those things where like after they did it, they're kind of like, oh, yeah, that probably doesn't translate too well.
A side scene, somebody is going to be on the beach one day and then cut their foot on a shard of glass from Jack Daniel's bottle or something, like, oh, how'd this get here? Well, you have Aquaman to thank for that.
There you go.
Ruined my vacation.
Why, Aquaman? Why? Concluding thoughts, Steve.
Well, Russ.
And rating, if you please.
One thing they didn't fix in the movie, they tried to patch it up as best they could, but they couldn't fix Batfleck. And that was the weakest link of the entire movie.
Agreed.
And so I'm probably going to hear from Brad.
Our good old friend Brad.
Every time he's on screen, whoever cast him as Bat, I would have taken George Clooney.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
I would.
I would totally not have gone that far.
I would still take George Clooney over Batfleck.
Blasphemy, I say.
Oh, man. I cannot stand when he's on screen. He does not personify Bruce Wayne, Batman whatsoever. Wrong body type, wrong voice, wrong everything. And then mixed with his lines were just kind of so throughout the whole movie. And he really didn't do that much special of anything, really. And so to me, every time he was on screen, it was a disappointment, which is a letdown. If you see the Nolan Batman films, which is pretty much what we last have, and then we have these films, it's a complete letdown. I mean, and that's goes to another reason of why I would have liked this film to be pushed out later. Yeah, still do it. Still remake the movie, but do some recasting. Give us a Flash movie and a Cyborg movie, and then re-release this one. Re-release it. So, I mean, that affects my rating because I wanted to like him more than the first iteration of Justice League, and I wanted to love him. And
just to dovetail off of what you're talking about, it's not like you don't like Ben Affleck as an actor. I think that there are other roles that he has been in that you're a big fan of. I think in this instance, it's just that there was a casting choice that, I think it's fair to say, like, we both wish that Christian Bale, for instance, could have reprised his role. Like if Warner Brothers were to like give Christian Bale a blank check and be like, hey, whatever the number you come up with, we want you to retain your role as Batman. I think that I can speak for myself. I would have loved to have seen Christian Bale shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the crew.
And also, I mean, Batman was basically Gadget Boy in this film.
Yeah.
Batman does no cool fighting. He's shooting guns and he does the occasional punch and the kick, but he's not doing any sort of martial arts or nothing. And he's just kind of in the right place at the right time where he has some zinger lines and that's really it. So throughout the rest of the movie, there you have cool parts for the rest of the actors in the cast, but for Batman, it's always a letdown. So there was that. For the most part, I did enjoy it. It was a welcome relief. There is definitely more to like than dislike with it, but being that Batman as a special character in the Marvel, my bad, in the DC
Where's
universe.
the bar of soap?
No, I don't have bad breath. A positive.
Why is he blowing bubbles?
Anyway,
that was good.
So with some of the pacing being off, with the scenes taking a little bit longer, and plus Batman being in there, those definitely knocked it down a couple notches. The music was great. I had no problems. I mean, the only problem I had was like scheduling conflicts. Otherwise, I would have sat there for the full freaking 4 hours.
Yeah.
Absolutely no problem. I mean, I had a bunch of stuff going on this week and I really had to be concerned with the time. Otherwise, it didn't really seem like 4 hours at all. And so I am glad they took the time that they did. I just think a few nitpicky scenes where I was going, okay, I got it. Come on, let's go. But the music, I mean, there was, I couldn't believe I was getting goosebumps and the scenes with the Amazons and, going back in history. And I mean, with it being rated R, they had so much more freedom to do what they wanted to get more of that comic book feel. It felt darker. It felt more serious. And that's stuff that I was wanting. I would say my rating of the movie would be, I would say 3.5 stars.
3.5 stars. What I did today was I ended up listening to our podcast episode of the initial review of the Justice League theatrical film. And this took place in 2017. At the time, you gave that film 2 stars, and I had given it 2.5 stars. So it was interesting to go back and be reminded of where we were at with all of that. I think it is terrific that after 3 years of Snyder working on his cut, that we, the audience, are treated to being entertained by a creative who actually listened to the fan feedback, implemented a lot. I would even argue most of what the fans were asking for and were disappointed in by the first theatrical film, and having a studio like Warner Brothers be willing to not only add an additional $70 million. Again, to my knowledge, this is not going to be released in theaters. This is only on HBO Max. So I don't even know how they're recouping their cost on this. But also to give Zack Snyder the creative freedom to do a lot. Like, I don't think they let him do everything he wanted to do, but I do think they gave him a lot of space, and it has paid off in dividends. And it's amazing because this could have been a total train wreck. Even when we were looking at the movie trailer,
train wreck number 2.
But we were looking at the little movie trailer that they put out there, and I was even saying, I'm like, man, at least we have the Joss Whedon version that came out already, had major issues. We didn't really care for it. We're not sure how this one's going to turn out. I mean, I love times like these where I'm proven wrong. Like it's these instances where like I was kind of having a feeling like the movie would go a certain way, and I was totally and completely wrong, and I love it. I'm relieved that I was wrong about it. I thought the acting, honestly, the acting was superb. Like, I'm with you. I think that Ben Affleck, notwithstanding, I think everybody else had just phenomenal performances. I mean, like there were these moments where they were riveting, and I got goosebumps too. I got totally engrossed into the moment. Like you were saying, that the soundtrack was terrific as well. I mean, even the ending, like I remember watching the theatrical version of this film and being so let down by the anticlimactic battle sequence that took place. And what a 180-degree turnaround where like we see like when they're trying to get like resurrect Superman, for instance. That's the first kind of instance we notice how like when Barry is going and he's trying to generate like an electrical current to like get the timing right and everything else. If you notice, like I think that was like when Victor, aka Cyborg, was having like one of those premonitions because he was connected to that particular mother box, and there was a bit of a failure that was going on where like Barry didn't know if he was supposed to go or not go. And if you recall in the first version of the film, Barry just kind of went and he was able to touch it at the right moment. It generated the current, and then Superman came up. Well, in this instance, it was like he messed up. Like I think Barry was kind of like he kind of stumbled or something
he
too.
Got shot.
Well, and I'm not even talking about the end. I'm talking about like when they're in Superman's ship and they're trying to resurrect Superman. There's something goes wrong, but then because he's making up for it, we realize, if you notice, like, because like the mother box had already touched the water, but then all of a sudden the time starts reversing back just a bit. And I don't even know if Barry meant for that to happen, but because he had to compensate for like the oopsie daisy, we get that first glimpse, and it's like, ooh, man! It took something that was kind of like a whatever kind of scene, like the thing that was driving it was like, oh, we're gonna resurrect Superman, but then to see how like these things could have gone wrong, that adds more gravity to the situation. Fast forward to the ending, where again things are going wrong and things are not going as planned, and there were so many moments of me wanting to cheer in my seat, like Cyborg when he's in there and he's doing his thing with the mother boxes, and how the mother boxes are creating this illusionary world, and they're trying to like mess with his mind and saying how he's broken, you should come home and you won't be alone, and how he's like, I'm not broken and I'm not alone. And it's at that moment that you realize his character has truly healed from his mental and emotional trauma, at least to a point where it's like he's really like on point,
or he's just accepted who he is in his life.
Yeah, like exactly. There's this level of acceptance that has gone on, and that's a big deal because throughout the entirety of the 4 hours, you are rooting for him. You want him to get to that point, and it's at that moment that he's able to do so. Another example is even with Barry, where like Barry gets shot, like what you said, and I mean, it looked like it hurt so bad too. Like just the acting and the way it looked and everything. I mean, I was even in my couch, I was like, oh, man.
I was like, ooh,
And I was wondering, how is he going to deal with that? Because that was not like some little dinky flesh wound like that. That's going to mess with his ability to do his thing. Right. And even like missing his timing, right? Like again, they had that breakdown of communications. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. And then all of a sudden they failed. They literally failed at the end of the movie. and the world was just done. Like, I mean, if you notice, like, I mean, Superman got disintegrated and Cyborg got, I mean, the whole place just went up. And that was when Barry realized he had to break his rule. And he was in uncharted territory. And at that point, movie making magic. Because at that point, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, what is happening next? I don't know where we're going, but this is awesome. This is why I watch a 4-hour long. I mean, my hat goes off to Zack Snyder. I'm like, dude, that is how you tell a story. That's why I got into comic books. Like you go through all these issues and you're trying to figure out like what's going on. You have all these like plot twists and turns and foreshadows and everything, misdirection. It was fantastic. It was really, really cool to see all of that. And even like when Steppenwolf was about to take out Cyborg with his axe, and he even says, for Darkseid, and you see that axe get charged up and he goes down, and then just right at the last second, like Superman just comes in and just boom, and you're just like, yeah, and you see Superman go in and just lay waste to him. And again, I'm a Batman fan, right? Like, I mean, I like me some Superman too, don't get me wrong, but like, there's just those moments where like when Superman is like in the zone and he's there to save that effing day, like you can't help it, man. You're just like, get them, you're just like, you want that justice to be served. Suckers got served. One of the other things too that we didn't even talk about was like the whole like finish him sequence where like totally satisfying where Aquaman like skewers Steppenwolf from behind.
So freaking awesome.
And like hoisting him up in the air like that. Superman goes up and decks him off the trident. And then Wonder Woman does this like backflip thing as his body is going toward the portal toward Darkseid and freaking cuts his head off before it reaches Darkseid's foot. And then Darkseid, because he's like totally just this cruel and horrible being, he like crushes his head. I mean, just like what a difference it makes when you compare the two films. And I mean, there are a few people here and there I've seen on social media who say that they just didn't care for the film and they couldn't relate to the character. I mean, those people, I'm sorry, you weren't smoking crack, because you either haven't seen the first film at all, or you're trying to be edgy and get attention or something, because there is like, I mean, again, this film is by no means perfect. It's not a perfect film. There were flaws in it. Totally own up to that. But you cannot sit there and tell me how it was like a waste of your time to watch this movie and you don't understand what the big deal is or anything else like that. And this is coming from someone who was critical of the first version of this film and also had concerns about whether or not Zack Snyder could deliver the goods as it applies to the mechanics of storytelling, because he tends to get wrapped up more in the visual flair of things. And he brought the goods. However, I'm with you, when it comes to the Batman situation, that was, it was a bummer for me. Like I couldn't get behind it. I thought that it was just, it should have been someone else.
It would have been cool to bring in Robert Pattinson since he's already making his own movie. Just saying.
I'm very curious to see what happens as a result of this, because the Warner Brothers bean counters and the executives, they're like they're paying attention. They want to see what kind of reception this film gets. And to my knowledge, I mean, like most of the people who I have talked to or who I've seen on social media, they're just like us. I mean, they really like this movie. And I don't know if Zack has more in the tank, that if Warner Brothers were to approach him and say, we want you to continue going down this path, make it like a Justice League sequel or something like that, if he'd be willing to do it or not. But in my opinion, I think that he can walk away from this with his head held up high. He can be proud of the work that he put into this, because the guy, he really did save this film from being
a disaster,
a complete disaster. Totally. So
the death of DC.
Anyway, there's so much more that I could talk about, and it all gets chalked up to a very good thing. I mean, I'm like so relieved. I'm thrilled. I'm excited. I mean, I've already seen the movie twice. This is a 4-hour movie, and I've already seen it twice. I'm ready to watch it a third time. Like it's so nice to be able to put on a movie that is a comic book film and does it right. When it comes to my rating, I think I'm going to give it. I think I'm going to stand by 4 stars. 4 stars is what I'm going to give it. And again, the initial theatrical version, I gave it 2.5. It's now at a 4. I think if some of those other other little things would have been changed up or whatever, this would have been a 5-star movie. And I think there are plenty of people out there who do feel like this is a 5-star movie, and that's totally cool too. That's, hats off to you guys. But anyway, I think it's worth noting that we have been talking now for over 2 hours. We're actually approaching the timeline that could have been the Justice League time slot.
My butt's aching in this chair.
I can't feel mine at all. That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm. You'll get exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention, it financially helps us continue doing the show itself. Also, you could do a search for us on social media and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. Last but not least, do a search on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live at twitch.tv/Joygasm. And you can see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We will see you all next week.